Barbara Barreno's event, which is the 4th Expo that we've held and the first in a virtual format. Welcome back to those of you who joined us last week for the Health Expo. GlobalWE Connect is an initiative that connects members of the Harvard University community and friends with organizations leading the way globally for women's empowerment in the arts, social services, education, health, economic development, entrepreneurship, policy, STEM, and other fields. Today is part 2 of the Women's Empowerment Expo, which focuses on the topic of education. As I mentioned last week, we held part 1 of the event, focusing on the topic of health. Well, welcome back for those of you who joined us then. We're thrilled to have our panelists here today, our organization representatives, and all of you to learn more about the wonderful and impactful work that these leaders and organizations are doing to advance women's and girls' empowerment around the world. Please note that this event is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook. We ask that you please at this time turn off your videos and mute your microphones so that we can listen to the panelists. To learn more about who's joining us today, we will launch a quick poll. And if you could please take a few seconds to answer 3 questions, we can get a better sense of who's joining us. So we'll launch the poll now.
And just as a reminder, if co-hosts, so panelists and all the rest of our co-hosts, please don't try to participate in the poll or stop the poll. Thank you.
And while you're answering the poll, we do have a file in the chat that we'll share, which has snapshots of every organization participating today. And please feel free to review that document as you listen to today's panelists and prepare for the breakout sessions where you'll hear from several different organizations. Now let's comment on the results of this poll. We have people from North America, we have folks from the Middle East, Asia, and Europe. And we also have sectors including, oh wow, many of you, it's your first event. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we have several who have attended 4 or more of our events, as well as some who have attended a few. And we have a good mix of people from different sectors, the private sector, public sector, nonprofit, very evenly split it seems, as well as multiple sectors. So thank you all so much for being here, and we look forward to your questions during these discussions as well. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the president of GlobalWE, Sajda Shroff, who will provide remarks for part 2 of this exciting 2-part event and who will moderate today's panel. Thank you, and Sajda, take it away.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And again, thank you everybody from joining us from literally around the world. It is really wonderful to see all of you here for what we know is going to be a very exciting event. As Barbara mentioned, my name is Sajda Shroff, and I am privileged to be president of Harvard GlobalWE. Harvard Global Women's Empowerment is a shared interest group, or SIG, of the Harvard Alumni Association. We are dedicated to the empowerment of women through education, dialogue, and connection among individuals working for women's rights and freedoms worldwide. We highlight and raise awareness about issues concerning women's empowerment worldwide, including but not limited to education, political rights, freedom from violence, women's health, and economic empowerment. In 2020, GlobalWE was the recipient of the Harvard Alumni Association's Club and SIG Outstanding Alumni Community Award. You can see it hanging behind me. The genesis of the Expo is based on the fact that GlobalWE aspires to be a node for women's empowerment organizations around the world. The Expo is based on an HAA toolkit and model for nonprofit board fairs that can be used by clubs and SIGs. With tremendous support from HAA, Travis, and CPIC, as well as Robin Mount at OCS, GlobalWE's first Expo was held in person at Harvard's iLab in 2016 and featured organizations addressing a wide range of issues impacting women and girls. The first Expo was spearheaded by Julie Palmer, our founder, and Tara Abrams. Thanks to my efforts and led by Tara Abrams and Louis Rohr, the Expo was held again on campus at Harvard Graduate School of Education in 2017 and 2018. Much gratitude to CPIC, OCS, and HAA, as well as our marketing chair, Kendall Jackson, for their amazing support over the years. Due to the pandemic, we were unable to host the Expo in 2020, but are thrilled to host today's event and expand our access to attendees from around the world. As Barbara's mentioned, this year's Expo is a two-part event on organizations leading the way for women's empowerment in the areas of health as well as education. Last week's Expo was immensely successful with wonderful insights, conversations, and questions. Today's event is focused on education, which as an education advisor, I'm particularly excited about. Just some quick ground rules. We ask that we all be respectful of each other's views. As a reminder, we are recording today's panel session and live streaming on Facebook, and we'll post it also on GlobalWE's social media platforms. Before I turn it over to Barbara, who will explain the format for today's event, let me thank you all again for joining us and express our deep gratitude to the panelists, organization representatives, GlobalWE Connect team, GlobalWE board members, and all of the volunteers who have made the Expo possible. We are super excited to have everyone here. Over to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Sajda. We'll begin today's event with a panel featuring 4 fantastic leaders of organizations focusing on education. And Sajda will be our moderator for today's panel, and she'll introduce the panelists in just a few minutes. After the panel, you'll have the opportunity to learn from 10 organizations who work on behalf of women and girls around the world. You should have received an email a couple of days ago with slides that highlight the participating organizations' work. They're called education snapshots, and we also will include them here in the chat in case you didn't have a chance to review them. There will be 3 breakout sessions and 5 rooms with 2 organizations each who will make brief presentations and answer your questions today. And please feel free to come and go throughout the different breakout rooms. Each opportunity you have to learn will be a good one, and you can freely go as you please. And we will return to the main room for some closing remarks and announcements at the end of the breakout sessions. As a reminder, please turn off your videos and mute your microphones so we can spotlight the panelists during the session. And now back to you, Sajda.
Thank you, Barbara. It is now my pleasure to welcome the following panelists. Maryam Montague from Project SOAR, Angela Patton from Girls for Change, Devyani Pershad from Pratham Education Foundation, and Anne Thibault from Sudela. Thank you all so very much for being here today. As a reminder to our attendees, please feel free to submit questions through the Q&A feature, chat function, or by raising your hand virtually. Our team will bundle the questions and we will ask them after the moderated questions are done. We will do our best to get to, of course, as many questions as possible. Let's begin by learning more about our panelists and the organizations that they work with. We would like each of you to give a brief 1 to 2 minute introduction of who you are, the organization you lead, and where you are based, what kind of work your organization does, and why women and girls empowerment is important to you. Let's start with Maryam. Maryam?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. I'm coming to you from Marrakesh, Morocco, and I'm delighted to be here. I'm the founder and executive director of Project SOAR. I'm going to just share my screen, if that works. Can you see my screen?
We can't, Maryam, so if you'd like to maybe just tell us what you're trying to share. We can't actually see your screen.
Certainly. Okay. So our mission at Project SOAR is to empower teen girls to be the leaders of today and tomorrow. We are a feminist organization based out of Morocco, but working in several countries. And we have a signature empowerment curriculum for girls. It's 25 workshops that takes girls through a series of modules where they understand better their value, their voice, their body, their rights, and their path. So thus far, we have 27 chapters in Morocco and Uganda, and we've just opened in Syria. We've empowered thousands of teen girl leaders through about 200 trained female facilitators, providing nearly 200,000 hours of empowerment worldwide with over 40 girl leader clubs. So our mission, in short, is really to provide underserved girls. The girls of Project SOAR are in general living on less than $1 a day, opportunities to stay in school and avoid child marriage.
Wow, Maryam, thank you. That's very impactful and close to home as well. Thank you so much. Now I will ask Angela to answer the same question. So a brief introduction of who you are, about your organization, and why women and girls empowerment is important to you. Angela?
Greetings, everyone. I am the CEO of Girls for a Change. Girls for Change has a national presence. However, we are based in Richmond, Virginia, and really are serving girls throughout the Central Virginia area. And that answer is why not? Why not? Because our mission is to prepare Black girls for the world and the world for Black girls. So as we are advocating to advance opportunities for our girls, we are clear that unfortunately our community does not see the worth that a Black girl or woman can bring to our world. So with starting with girls as early as first grade and working with them into their post-secondary careers or education, Girls for a Change is in it until our girls win it. We are there for the long haul. We are there as long as our girls need us. And we have been standing strong in the Richmond Tri-City area for 20 years. And it's all about advancing opportunities for Black girls at Girls for a Change.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's very inspiring. Devyani, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sajda, and thank you for having us here. I'm Devyani Pershad, and I come from Pratham Education Foundation in India. I'm based in New Delhi at the moment, and I'll tell you a little bit about the organization and what I do here. So Pratham is an Indian NGO which is focused on improving learning opportunities for children and helping youth reach their full potential. In order to do this, we work on education and livelihoods, and we have programs that span the entire education spectrum. So right from early childhood education to working with women and girls who have dropped out of school and helping youth to improve their livelihoods and job opportunities across the country. Over the years, we've developed specialized initiatives such as teaching at the right level and ASAR to solve specific challenges in the education and skills development space in India. And today we are reaching millions of children and thousands of young people every year through our work. For me personally, I lead Pratham's international collaborations and also our communications function. And my primary role is to support other organizations, partners, governments to adapt some of our experiences and learnings to contexts outside India. So I'm very happy to be here and to be able to share some of what we've learned. And as you know, with any organization working with children and youth, we truly believe in education as a tool for empowerment, for children, for families, and for communities. And I think what we've seen in our experience is that girls and women do play a very crucial role in helping families and communities to move forward and break barriers. I think a goal that we aim to help them accomplish through our programs. I personally care a lot about giving every girl and woman the opportunity to realize their potential, an opportunity that's very close to my heart, coming from a background where I was allowed to grow and pursue my dreams. So thank you, Sajda, and thank you for having us here.
Thank you, Devyani, for that very heartfelt sharing. Thank you so much. And Anne, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anne Thibault. I'm the co-founder and president of Swadela, a young organization that was created last year before the pandemic. And so the issue we are focusing on is really girls' education and keeping girls in school. I am based in Paris, France right now, but our organization is working in Mali, and we plan to expand in Western Africa. And so basically the work that we try to do is to empower girls by teaching them negotiation skills and developing their ability for decision and action, in particular the decision that affect their education, their health, and their future. So by teaching them this kind of skills, we hope that they are able to influence the decision and make their voice heard. So basically, we train negotiation coaches in the local context, and then we give them intensive training in negotiation, and then they go to schools and teach negotiation to adolescent girls. So.
Thank you so much, Anne. That's fascinating. Thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing and providing that background information. It's very helpful to be able to contextualize what each of you are doing, but also see the similarities in terms of your approaches. Now we're going to ask some questions of each of the panelists, starting with Angela. Angela, given the challenges that organizations around the world have encountered shifting to remote or hybrid learning models during the past year, how has Girls for a Change adapted its programming to the new normal? And what are your strategies to ensure that the girls your organization is serving remain engaged and excited about these programs? Angela?
Thank you. Well, with Girls for a Change's vision around girls being seen, heard, and celebrated, the first thing that we thought that we had to do was ask the girls. You know, grown people just don't always have the answer. And so when our schools shut down, that meant that Girls for a Change had to shut down as well, because a lot of our partnerships are in schools. We are the girl mentoring program for 5 school districts in Virginia. And so with that being said, because it was during the school year and not a summer year, it was only one program that we had that we really had to control, which was a Saturday program and not during the school day. So after 2 weeks, it allowed us time to pause and just say, what is the core of our work? Because we know that usually the people that are on the forefront, who are the influence makers, don't really consider what the children feel. What do they want to do? And, you know, we had schools that didn't have laptops and, you know, they didn't have, Wi-Fi. It was just a lot going on. So we creatively just went to our families multiple ways. Some we had relationships with where we were giving food, so we were able to ask them with door to door. Some we were able to ask by phone call, and some through an email. And we quickly got our girls involved to create the way they wanted to engage. And fortunately for Girls for a Change, we were able to make sure that every girl that was in our Girl Ambassador Workforce program, that was 30 girls, they remained in the program and received a job remotely, which was the future of work that we were planning for. Our summer camp, which engaged over 20 middle school girls, that was able to go strong. And our little girls who were first grade and second grade, their parents, you know, engaged in this remote learning where we did pre-videos and pre-recording and engage our girls in being creative and their true selves. So I think for us, the pivot was ask who you're serving, ask who you say you're supporting, because it's too many times that we are creating and building for individuals that were not included in the conversation. And this is a skill set and a way that we problem solve with our girls that made us continue to be able to be in partnership with our girls.
I love that, Angela. Thank you. I mean, you really made them, you empowered them truly, even as part of the process, in terms of engaging them about their decision, the next steps and what they'd like to see. So that's, you were actually walking your mission, which is wonderful, The next question is for Devyani. So Devyani, Pratham has a second chance program, which focuses on giving girls and young women who have dropped out of school another chance at education. How has the program evolved over the decade it has been in existence? And do you see this program expanding in the future to reach more girls and women, particularly those who've also recently dropped out of school as a result of the pandemic? Devyani?
Thanks, Sajda. And it was great hearing Angela's experience. It reminded me a lot of what we've been doing here in India with the children and young people in our communities. So thanks for sharing, Angela. The Second Chance program is quite a unique program at Pratham. And the idea really came about as early as 2009 when we were working at large scale across several urban communities and rural communities. And in Mumbai, we started to realize that there was a need to support female volunteers who were coming forward to help children in the communities to actually go forward with their education and see what opportunities were available to them. So we started with with just a pilot project, which led to the beginning of the Second Chance program, and a program that began with about 350 students. Today reaches about 3,000 women and girls every single year, and the program is active in 10 states across India. The main objective of the program was identified as being to complete the grade 10 examination. In India, the grade 10 examination is an important certification to move forward, of course, with your education, but also to pursue many other opportunities, such as job opportunities in the communities. So we identified that as a very clear goal that we could help these girls and women who had dropped out of school to achieve. And that's how we're being able to implement this program at scale across the country. Now, over the decade, the program has reached more than 35,000 students. We've been focusing on issues such as addressing learning gaps, dealing with challenges such as distance, access to learning, and making learning opportunities easy for our students. Our education work has helped us to design a program for older girls and women that really helps these women who may have left school in primary grades many, many years ago still catch up, and over a period of 1 year actually take that secondary school examination. And we've had great success. In the early days, it was a rough start, but today on average, we have more than 80% of the women who actually sit for the program, sit for the examination, actually clear the examination. And what we've seen over the years is that not only do the women clear the examination, about 50% of our alumni actually go back to school, either through going back to an educational institution or through open schooling, and a large proportion of them also take up jobs. And even for those who are at home, they are empowered then to find ways to support themselves, to help their families, to support the education of their children, or even take steps such as, financial independence, starting a small business, because we've seen that the program, in addition to academic learning, also helps build confidence, communication, the ability to navigate even some daily life requirements, which otherwise would have been out of their reach. And as everyone has been saying, obviously in the face of the pandemic, like the rest of the organizations and the rest of our work in India, the program had to completely transform from physical classes to remote learning, almost overnight. So we've used a variety of engagement mechanisms, simple technology, SMS, WhatsApp messages, WhatsApp calls, Zoom calls, not very different from this one, to make sure that our students kept learning. And this is continuing even today. As many of you would be aware, the pandemic situation in India is quite bad. So we have continued to have our centers remain closed, but our students continue to learn. And what this has taught us is that moving forward, we can look at about 3 pathways for a program like this. The first is, of course, continuing, creating learning opportunities locally for girls and women who have dropped out of school through our direct model where they come and learn. But then the second is actually to think about a hybrid model where there's a mix of face-to-face and remote teaching learning, so that even those students who are not able to come regularly to the center for a variety of different reasons still can continue to pursue learning. And of course, the third is to see, is it possible to really have a completely remote program with very limited face-to-face interaction, which may be suited for girls and women in certain communities, or where we have a small number of women, for example, so it doesn't warrant having a program. And in the coming months, we're hoping to be able to continue building more and more on our digital content, which is not just for academic learning, but also for building awareness of these girls and women, for opportunities that exist for them, for vocational opportunities that exist for them. We are also now starting to collaborate and partner with other organizations who are working with girls and women, but also with adolescents, to help them sort of adapt some of the academic practices, even for students who are in high school, for example. We are also going to now locally reach out to students to understand what is really the status of dropouts, as you were mentioning, Sajda, and can such younger children, girls and boys, be enrolled into opportunities like Second Chance through the hybrid model or the remote models, to make sure that they slowly get back into the education net, and obviously continuing to work with the government system to see where we can apply some of our learning. So it's been quite an interesting journey, and I think today we're able to do a lot more with the program than what we set out to do as the main objective.
Thanks, Devyani. So this is a great example of finding those silver linings in the pandemic in terms of new ways to reinvent yourself. So thank you. The next question is for Anne. Anne, you and your co-founder, and I'm going to probably mess up the name, but Didemba Gori, founded Sodela in 2020. What have been the most exciting aspects of launching a startup during the pandemic? And what are some of the challenges that you are facing with your negotiation training programs, given the uncertainty about when in-person gatherings will be able to resume? Anne?
Yeah, sure. So Didemba Gori and I, as you said, founded Sodela in 2020. And as we started, like we sort of already had a plan, because the intervention with girls that we are trying to implement was already tested in Zambia. So and it was evaluated, and the impact evaluation revealed it has had positive impact on girls' education, attendance, grades, etc. So we had a script, and of course, as I will start with the challenges, of course, the pandemic changed the script that we had. Like initially we wanted to, we were planning to go to the field and recruit negotiation coaches and teach them in person. And this is particularly relevant for negotiation skills, because as you know, if you ever took some negotiation classes at Harvard, but you learn through simulation and games and like one-on-one interactions. So how could we do that without the ability to travel? So we had to redesign our model and decided to do the coach training online. So we did it through Zoom. And I would say that one of the first learning really of the pandemic for us was to accept that, and given the emergency that the girls faced to stay in school in this context, where we felt that developing those skills to influence the decisions around girls' education was something really urgent. And even though the conditions were not perfect, we decided to just start. So it was a great opportunity for learning on making decisions in the world of uncertainty. So yeah, embracing this uncertainty, I guess, was definitely both a challenge and an exciting part. As part of, so also when you start a new venture, you want to pilot your activity to test your model and test your model. So definitely we got into the stress part. And so one of the things that we quickly learned, for example, and that we wished we had been there to be able to manage, is that so our curriculum was in French, and of course we anticipated that girls in public school were not necessarily fluent in French, so we were anticipating that the teaching would be bilingual, but it turned out that the level of French was much lower than what we expected. So we had sort of to make very quick decision and ask our coaches to teach in local language in Bamana without further practicing and training. And they did a great job, but I would say that, of course, if we had been there, maybe we would have been able to make decisions early on. Also, I would say that another challenge is the ability to assess the risks. Because of course, like when you're working with an intervention, and I'm sure my colleagues in the panel can relate, when you're trying to change power dynamics and gender dynamics, so because we're teaching girls to interact differently with their parents, with their girlfriend, professors, and also boys. And so, for example, we had not anticipated that some topics like girls and boys relationship that were appropriate for Zambia were not that appropriate to talk about in a classroom in the context of Mali. So we had to make decisions in the distance, and sometimes just the night before for the next day, and I guess it was a big pressure to not make the wrong decision that could have dramatic impact on our future activities. So I'd say these were definitely challenges that eventually we managed to navigate. And really, I would say the most exciting aspect of launching Swadela during the pandemic was actually the result it had on the girls. Because, you know, you have this idea, it's all on paper, you imagine how things would be. But then when you see the enthusiasm of girls in the classroom actually practicing and understanding negotiation concepts that we heard at Harvard, you know, but they're able to use them with their own words and see opportunities for them to manage better disagreements and engage in these conversations and influence decisions to create win-win solutions. I would say that this was really, really extremely rewarding and exciting to see.
Thanks, Anne. Actually, it's also very inspiring to see how you were very quickly able to sort of, you know, roll with the punches, so to speak, and adjust. And what you've reminded us about how is the most critical aspect, I think, when we think about educational programming is context, and the, you know, the critical nature and the importance of that. So thank you for sharing. That's very interesting and wonderful to see how you have managed to, you know, make it through this first stage, even during such challenging circumstances. The next question in this round is for Maryam. Maryam, Project SOAR is operating in Morocco, Uganda, and more recently, Syria. What are the similarities and differences between the organization's operations in these 3 countries? And what learnings have you and your team had from implementing the Project SOAR in a Box curriculum across the different countries? Maryam?
Yes, absolutely. So now I have, when I started Project SOAR, I started it literally in my own backyard with a group of 20 girls from my village, but I knew that I wanted to take that solution that we had, which is these 25 leadership workshops, and figure out how to scale it. So scaling was a very important part of the solution. And our solution is called Project SOAR in a Box, which is literally a mobile bag on wheels that contains everything that a team of facilitators needs to implement the program. So it includes our workshop curriculum, our training manuals, our supplies for all of the workshops, period kits. Every girl at Project SOAR gets a kit to manage her menstruation for 3 years, empowerment journals, our Girl Leader Club toolkit, and our reporting system. So this has been really essential to us being able to kind of scale very nimbly. And that's why we've been able to expand so quickly, because we make it so easy for facilitators and for donors and for the government to see how our solution can be scaled. That has allowed us to move throughout Morocco. And one of the key things in scaling in Morocco was to really have that impact data that showed, that what we did actually worked. And it had to be in a way that people could understand. So like, what is this empowerment? What does it really do? But when we were able to show through our data that less than 1% of Project SOAR Moroccan girls dropped out of school, right? And that's more than 95% lower than the national dropout rate of, for middle and high school girls. Less than 1% of girls were getting married underage, far lower than the national child marriage average of 14%. Near 90% of Project SOAR girls in Morocco go on to higher education. So this impact data really helped us to scale because we could prove that what we did worked. And we were able to use that to start our pilot in Uganda. So where we really wanted to test our model in a completely different location, and Uganda is a adolescent girl priority country. So there we started our pilot with 5 schools with 129 girls. We found out that 100% of the Project SOAR girls passed the school year. All of the girls stayed in school compared to the national dropout rate of 43%. and 0 of the girls married underage, compared to the national average of 40%. So again, I think key to scaling in every country has been collecting the data, really being able to show that the science of the source solution, that it works, right? That it has that impact. And that really generates excitement over what we do. More recently, we have started in Syria. We want to take the source solution and adapt it to those communities of girls who really need it. And so we were thinking, how could the source solution help internally displaced girls? So, Syria has 6.5 million internally displaced people. And so we are now piloting in Syria with 8 community centers with 304 girls. So we're in the research phase right now. We're piloting with 3 different Syrian partner organizations who really have the lay of the land. So I would say really key to our model and to our solution is to partner, adapt, pilot, and then scale. So we've been able to do those and to take those steps in all of the countries where we work.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Maryam, and very inspiring. And I love the idea of the whole kit being in a box, from the purposes of transferability, but also, just also equipping the people who are running your workshops and your sessions with, sort of the ability to very quickly contextualize as well. So what a wonderful idea. So now we're going to ask one more question of each of our panelists, and then we will be taking questions from our audience. From our attendees. So we're going to start with Devyani in this round. Devyani, the pandemic has been a challenging time for everyone, but also an opportunity for learning. Are there some experiences from this period in India, especially with respect to girls and women participation in work and learning, that you'd like to share? You did talk about this earlier, but is there anything more specific, particularly given how high the pandemic, how strongly the pandemic has affected India and continues to do so? Devyani?
Thanks, Sajda. I think I'd like to share some positive experiences, though I do want to caveat that, of course, every experience is not like this. But, as Pratham, we have about 6,000 staff across the country, which means that we have thousands of women across the country in our workforce. We are predominantly women-led as well. And of course, in addition, we also have thousands of girls and women who are being impacted by our programs. And of course, as you would expect, I think the pandemic meant that the most vulnerable would be impacted the most. And girls and women is one such group in India. But what we saw, interestingly, was so many examples to show the resilience and drive of girls and women across the country. And I'll start just with our own teams. As is expected, as is happening across the world, our team members had to balance, now being at home, had to balance home responsibilities and work. And so many of them were able to do that so well. Not only being able to get the support of their family members, but also getting them engaged in the work that they would do, sharing with them what was actually happening on the ground. And this really showed the commitment of our team members to their work into the organization, and the extent to which this commitment can ensure that your family comes along as well. Many of our team members, and especially the women, learned how to work digitally and online in just a matter of days. Majority of our field staff had never been on a Zoom call before, and they all learned in a matter of days because everything became online, and that was really inspiring to see. But not just within Pratham, we also saw across the communities in which we're working that mothers really stepped up to support their children's learning. So, engaging with the digital content that was going out by organizations like Pratham, engaging children in activities and learning at home, making sure that children were doing something. Also, giving feedback, engaging with Pratham team members. We were reaching children in more than 10,000 communities with daily learning content, and actually directly contacting many of the family members, which in most cases was mothers. And it was fantastic to see how involved they were getting. And of course, we saw so much enthusiasm from the girls about learning. One of my favorite memories from the last year is of this young girl, and I'll be happy to share the video later, from Jammu Kashmir, who wrote a rap song. We sent out an activity to children to say, why don't you write a song on COVID? And she wrote this really catchy rap song on COVID in Hindi. And just through that little simple video that she shared back with our team members, she was able to inspire thousands of people, not just through her talent, but also that important message, to stay home, to stay safe. And even in our vocational programs, we saw thousands of young girls who stayed committed to their jobs in, sectors like healthcare provision, continuing to learn, upskill themselves in this period so that they could, meaningfully contribute to the society and continue to grow. And I think what I've learned is that sometimes those who you consider to be the most vulnerable can often have the capacity to be most resilient and set examples for others.
That's wonderful, Devyani. And I think it always points out to us that, that those that are actually facing those experiences often will come to us with solutions, which is also what we heard from Angela. So that is a really heartfelt lesson and one to definitely be remembered. Thank you. Now, Maryam, you, in your earlier response talked a lot about the critical nature of sort of the number of dropouts and refugees and displaced young women. When you think about this and you think about the programming that Project SOAR has implemented, we're just wondering, does your data now provide the impact or prove the impact of Project SOAR? And how do you engage with your partners? You mentioned that they're key to your model of scaling. So how do you find them? How do you source the partners across these different geographies? And how is the data proving impact for you? Maryam?
Sure, thank you. Well, one of the key things is that, really it's critical if you want to impact girls that you have to partner not only at the local level, right, with parents and communities, community allies, but essentially also at the national level with government. So we've been really fortunate in Morocco that the Moroccan government has bought into our solution, right? So they see the impact data and it's hard to deny. We're working with a group of girls who are very underserved, living on less than $1 a day. And so the Moroccan government has become an investor, a girl power investor with us. That's been critical. That'll allow us to scale. We're now in discussions with a number of different ministries to continue our work since, of course, we have girls across all areas. In Syria, what was really important for us is since we're working in a really delicate, like we're working in the midst of a conflict, right? There's literally one of our partners just 2 weeks ago, there was bombing all around the center and they lost one of their staff. Right, so I think it's really critical to partner in a way where you are humble and you are listening and learning from your partners, right? We can never know what they know. So it's a true partnership. It's not just about, asking them to implement a program. It's a true adaptation of a program together in a way that serves all of the organizations with which we work. So I think that's important. Since we're a feminist organization, we're really looking for partners that are interested in gender equity. That's critical. But I will also say, since we're a minors organization, parents are so key to our model, right? We say that we are one hand, the parents are the other hand. So we have to get the buy-in of the parents. And since we're working in those sensitive areas, right, of confronting child marriage and cultural issues that contribute to child marriage and confronting the critical rate of girl dropouts, this means that looking at that enabling environment at the community level is just so important.
Thanks, Maryam. And that's really critical. We also just recently finished some work in Syria and, the situation on the ground, it's difficult to navigate. So definitely having partners on the ground and having the community buy-in and the family buy-in is super critical. Absolutely right. And over to you. What were the results and impacts of the first pilot that you had in Mali?
So, of course, we are still analyzing the data because this was just a few weeks ago that we finalized. But the initial results that we were able to observe is first an incredible enthusiasm from the girls. There was like high demand to be part of the program, and actually we had a long waiting list. and also girls' incredible enthusiasm during their interactions with the coaches and to continue with Swadela. So this was a very positive immediate feedback. Now, in terms of how we would measure our impact, we are collecting data on different aspects. So first on girls' education, on girls' aspirations on education, which unfortunately is very low, and that we hope will be able to influence through our role models. We're collecting data on learning negotiation, like do they actually understand the concepts, and also we will have a few evaluating activities where we will bring the parents and have them have a role play where girls will have to influence decisions of the parents to invest on them. So that would be a sort of lab in the field experiment that will run there. And we also want to measure parents' perceptions on how they feel that the program was transformative in the relationship with their daughters. So we really look forward to sharing this data as soon as we have them. And of course, we're planning to have more pilots in private and public schools in the next month.
Exciting, very exciting. Congratulations. Excellent. And a question for Angela. Angela, we know that caring for ourselves when we are caring for communities is challenging. But as we are reminded of self-care, it is critical, and it is an act also of resistance. How are you managing to care for yourself and your staff in the context of holding the young people and families you support together? And what challenges are you experiencing? Angela?
Thank you. As we all have heard these amazing women on the panel, you may wonder, how do they get any sleep, right? So when you stand in the gaps of your community, you have to definitely take time for yourself. And that was a long road for me to learn that. I was reminded by my own family members, I was reminded by friends constantly when someone would send me a text message, and it's always like, go to bed, get some sleep, shut your eyes, get a massage, just kind of, reminding me to take care of myself, because they know that in the work that I have been called to do for Black girls, it's heavy work. It's not easy. I even commend everyone who's doing it on a global level, because my parents are, unfortunately, the population I serve are in healing with their children. So it could be challenging to get the parental involvement that we need, even though they are aware of education. But it's almost like from generation to the next generation, a lot of our families in the South, specifically in Richmond, Virginia, where I am supporting my families. I'm from here too. I didn't go to another area where I tried to say, I may have a solution to work with you. I have endured some of these same oppressions. I understand what it meant to be pushed out of school because I was a Black girl who had a question. I understand what it means to have, shame on your body, your skin complexion, your hair texture. And so my girls face some of the same trauma that their family members, specifically their mothers, are trying to overcome too. So one of the things that I do intentionally in Girls for Change is I don't give my girls a mindfulness program. I participate in the mindfulness program with the girls. I make sure that I have on my calendar the same work that I need to do, that I'm asking my families and my girls to do, or to expose them to, or have access to. So I think that that's one way, and I'm appreciative of friends and family members that are reminding me, instead of me just telling them, don't forget to make a donation and volunteer and help my girls, right? I am taking that too as a way of donating to those who are leading the way by reminding us that self-care is so important. And I am also making sure that in this crisis that we're in, this pandemic, that, not only are my girls thinking about, how it's affecting their family, we have a peer-to-peer advisory group that our girls created. our girls were like, we need to help each other. So without me always, or my staff leading the way of solution-driven problem solving for the girls, we gave the power back to them and said, how can you support each other? And I just want to commend, you know, a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old or 16-year-old being intentional and unapologetic about how to stand in their gap. Next week, I am partnering with a urban clothing store based on my girls' request, and they are creating 6 events in the community to engage the leaders about how they want to reopen the school. We have schools that are right across the street from each other that have their own plan. And our girls were like, have you asked us, right? But in that meeting and rally or, you know, day of engagement, I think they're calling it Fresh Start. That's what the name of the event is. The girls are also making sure that someone is doing line dancing on the side, that they have someone taking their blood pressure, that someone is also there to do a little meditation, but they also are telling the community what they need and what they desire and what their dreams are. So I commend them from understanding that balance matters too. And that's how we're getting it done.
Excellent, Angela. That's inspiring in itself. Thank you so much. We're now going to take some questions from our attendees. So we had one question earlier from Lisa that she put into the chat box. Are any of you considering incorporating any sports programming into what you're doing for girls?
I can answer that. So I am not a sports program, but I had girls who play sports and had a really challenging time figuring out how to do social change and be on a basketball team. And when the pandemic hit us, you know, our sports were in and out, in and out. And fortunately for us, the WNBA contacted Girls for a Change and was like, how can we partner? So one, you know, benefit to this pandemic is it made a lot of us sit down and rethink, reimagine how we partner, how we execute programs for individuals. And so now Girls for Change still is not a sports program, but within this partnership, our girls now have the opportunity to create campaigns about what it means to be a young woman athlete. What does it mean to also get a job as a woman in the sports industry? And so we are also making sure that this is not just girls on the sidelines who see these gaps, but girls who are athletes and say, wow, if I don't become this professional player in whatever sport, maybe I want a job as a sports manager. Maybe I even want to own my own team. But what does that look like? And why have women been pushed out and unseen and unheard in this space where we make tremendous impact? And so we're really excited about what that looks like in the partnership in our mission around social change and what does it mean in the sports industry.
Thanks, Angela. And Maryam posted in the chat that their Project SOAR has a partnership now in Morocco. We're just going to move on to our next question, which is actually from, I hope I'm saying this correctly. Is it Raquel? Raquel?
Yes, Rachel. Thank
Rachel.
you. Yes. So my question is directed around intersectionality, persons with disability, because I am a global social development professional who provides working policies and programs for women and young girls with disability in low and middle income countries across Africa. And my question is directed to any of the panelists in this section. I would like to ask if most of your programs have some, at least 5 or 10% of girls included in terms of education or health or any social life skills that they can benefit from, most especially girls with disability that cuts across some intellectual disability in maybe in Down syndrome or autism spectrum or ADHD or anything around intellectual challenges. So my question is, how do we...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Panelists, anybody would like to respond to that?
I'd love to respond. So Project SOAR right now is doing a pilot specifically for girls with disabilities. So partnering with a disabilities organization. Again, that idea of we will never be able to have as much experience as this organization. So we are currently piloting with girls with with autism and Down syndrome, as well as girls who are deaf and mute, as well as girls with physical and mobility issues. So we're very excited about the potential of adapting the source solution to the specific needs of those girls.
Thanks, Maryam. Thank you so much. We are running really short of time, so unfortunately we won't be able to take any more Q&A right now, but we do have the opportunity to move into our breakout room shortly, which we will be discussing in just a second. So again, thank you again to our panelists for participating and being here today, and the wonderful presentations and sharing of your approach. You are all so inspirational, and we are so grateful for everything that you are doing. So again, thank you to everybody, and thank you to our panelists for sharing your very, very valuable insights and perspectives. I will now turn it back over to Barbara. Barbara?
Thank you, Sajda, and thank you so much to our terrific panelists. You did an amazing job, and I can tell from our chat that everyone was so happy to hear from you and learn from you and your organizations. And we've put the education snapshots in the chat, so if you have a chance to look at that file and go to our website, you can learn a lot more about the panelists and their organization.